Are we streaming now, John?
Yep.
Okay. I'm calling to order this Board of Education meeting for Monday, March 22nd. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would mind taking themselves off of mute and joining me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America,
and to the republic
for
for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we have a very long agenda tonight. I will be brief. We are moving our way through the budget season. We had a very productive meeting with the Board of Finance last week. We've had some comments, questions back and forth since then primarily regarding the ARP American Rescue Plan and which, if any, of the Board of Education's revenue shortfalls might be available for the town to use through that ARP. They're looking specifically at revenue losses in the school lunch program, as well as building rental revenues, potentially pay-to-play revenue losses if there are any. And so they're looking at those options. They're reaching out to our representatives to find out clarity on that. We will have another meeting with the Board of Finance tomorrow. And for members of the public who are watching at this point in the budget season, whether you support the Board of Education's budget or not, the appropriate mechanism to have your voice heard is emails to the Board of Finance at this point, not to the Board of Education. While we always welcome the feedback, the budget is in the hands of the Board of Finance at this point, and they were very busy in their deliberations right now. And that is it. We have a very busy night. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. De Silva.
Okay, sharing that theme of a very busy night, my comments will be brief as well. Good evening, everyone. Some of you I just saw a few moments ago. We apologize for being late. So I will actually quote the email I received because I feel like it's on top of mind. Our science research program kids are crushing it this year at the Connecticut Science and Engineering Fair last week. So all of those children will be recognized some way, somehow. Certainly RPS News is a great forum in which to do it, but I felt like I couldn't not speak about that tonight since I got the email a little while ago. And those are the things that we really want to spend time celebrating. So good for all of them. On a different note, just a couple of little quick things. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, those are grants that the Ridgefield Public Schools will be receiving. We have not received official notice on ESSER 3 funds yet, but we have received official notice on ESSER 2. Those funds have 4 priorities. The first priority is to target learning loss. That could be learning acceleration and or remediation. The second priority is to target social emotional needs of kids and support of faculty in terms of training of the like. The third priority is technology and making sure that our students have what they need to be, let's just say, in the current experience or if they're in that type of experience in the future. And the fourth priority is all the other COVID things that you might think about, like plexiglass and PPE and all of the fun stuff that I hope to never hear about again in the future. So those are 4 priorities and they're in that order. I anticipate that ESSER 3 funds will likely have those same 4 priorities, but we have not received the grant application for those monies yet. We do anticipate that they're going to be more than ESSER 2, so that's good news. And like I said, ESSER 2 is about $400,000. I'm going to just share out very minimal information about something that families will learn more about, as will faculty in the coming weeks. And the reason I'm only sharing very minimal information is because that's all I have at this point. So what we did want to share is that for fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22, so that the ESSER money I just talked about will likely impact fiscal year 22. We will be looking at summer programming for students. And the reason that we have minimal information is because we actually just reached out today to our faculty to get a sense of who's willing and able to teach this summer. And so what we'd like to do is offer essentially 3 sessions of a summer program. We have lots of different names that we're thinking about, but let's just say a summer program, 3 different sessions. Those sessions will be 2 weeks in length each. So one will start the day after school ends, and if everything continues as beautifully as it is, happy spring. June 15th to June 30th would be the first session, fiscal year 21. The second session would run July 5th to July 16th, fiscal year 22. Session 3 would run July 19th to July 30th. That's all draft still, but that's what we're planning. So about 2-week sessions. We would be offering a program for elementary students, middle school students, and high school students. The content in context of those programs will be shared shortly. The elementary program, middle school program will be device free. But there'll be academics, there'll be support from the elective piece, just looking at physical activity for kids, social emotional activity for kids, how can kids come together and work on a collaborative project, lots of enriching opportunities, again, just to really target that social emotional support for kids, and then the small group instruction to look at the academic loss or acceleration that may need to happen. Elementary, middle, and high school families can expect communication shortly, probably within the next week and a half to 2 weeks, maybe a little bit more. But it's exciting, I think, for all of our students. It will not cost families anything. So we'll be able to capture it within our budget and within ESSER 2 monies. Even this board will receive more information because we know that we're sharing very little with you tonight, but we wanted you to hear it from us first as we begin to communicate out to families and faculty. So hopefully by the next board meeting, when we're together, we'll have more detailed information, but we're proud and excited to be able to offer this for our kids this summer. In terms of sites, we're still working that out as well. We're anticipating that one of the sites will be Veterans Park for our elementary school age children. And there's lots of reasons why that is, but I do think it'll give the benefit of families who may need aftercare at the Boys and Girls Club because it's close by, if that's what they need, or if that's what the Boys and Girls Club is offering. So we're thinking about all those details. So I know that it's a drafty plan, but that's what we have for you now. And that's it. I promised I'd keep it short. So we have a lofty agenda and we'll talk more about this in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
You got it.
Committee chairs, I believe strategic planning was the only committee that has met in the last 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Budget and finance met last Monday on the 15th, I believe.
You are correct. Okay. Ken, that's both yours.
So we go. The Budget and Finance Committee met on Monday, March 15th. We got Don Norton provided us a financial report for the period ending February 28th. We did talk about some transfers, and we did get an update on budgeted COVID-19 expenses, all of which we will hear a little bit about tonight. The Strategic Planning Committee, we just met an hour ago, and again, Dr. De Silva apologized, but we do apologize for starting everything a little late. We talked about a little bit about the history of the feeder patterns, and we talked about our priorities going forward with addressing sort of the short-term and long-term issues that are facing the district relative to that. And we also touched just very briefly on transportation, and those are going to be our first initial priorities as we move forward through this year.
Thank you. Any liaison or representative reports? Kathleen?
The Energy Task Force met on March 18th, and to make a meeting short, we came away with, we talked about the emissions cost summary for 0 CO2 goals for the state, and they're quite exciting, actually, in many ways, of how it could come about. And basically, the takeaways are greater resilience on renewable energy, having solar panels, many of them being on our schools. They're hoping that as when we renegotiate our contract with the bus companies, that we begin to get some electric bus there, having EV charges, electrical town vehicles, as well as other things. And also the committee is going to be meeting on March 31st at 4 o'clock with the Board of Selectmen to talk about how we can all partner together on this. And I will be part of that. And I'm going to ask another member of the Board of Education to join me too. And that's it. But it's, you know, it's sort of a liaison committee where we work with other town organizations as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Tina?
Yes, very quick. RC CASA, we finally met after months. So, you know, it was just a regrouping, just seeing where every other organization is. And we are trying to come up with, all the groups who are part of that are trying to come up with ways we can help the community. So we meet next month. And in case anybody has some ideas how we can help with the community, anything, just send me an email. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Sean?
On a tangentially related note, the Ridgefield Prevention Council's second advertisement for their March 25th, I think that's Thursday, 7 p.m. Zoom on internet safety, how to recognize scammers, hackers, and more tips with Detective Victoria Ryan from the Ridgefield Police Department. You can register by emailing ridgefieldprevention@gmail.com.
Thanks, Sean. Other liaison or representative reports?
Just from the legislative side, CABE did do their Day on the Hill. They recorded it. I did not have a chance to attend live, but I understand probably several others did. They're going to do a legislative update on June 14th as well to sort of recap some of the Day on the Hill. This is normally an in-person event. It was all on Zoom. I don't know if anybody else was actually present there, but I don't have it, so I don't have any readouts from it, but
Yeah, I was there. I think Margaret was there as well. There are a ton of bills being proposed right now. Not all of them are favorable. The most notable one, by the way, guys, is pulling SROs out of the schools, which we talked about last fall. There is a bill in place now to do exactly that, whether we like it or not.
Thank you. So we'll watch these bills going forward. Is that all for liaisons? Okay, moving on. Approval of the January 25th minutes. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of January 25th, 2021 regular board meeting.
Do I have a second? Nora. Comments? Anyone just wants to take a second and read the one area where I thought we might have concerns was on the write-up around the agenda item with Nick Simmons and open choice. I just want to make sure that everybody's okay with how it was written up. It's on page 2B. I didn't see anything of concern. I just wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to weigh in. We good? Okay, moving on. Are we all those in favor of approving the minutes from January 25th? Please raise your hands. I believe that is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to the January 30th minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of January 30th, 2021 Board of Ed public hearing.
Second. Kathleen. Comment? No, that was nice and short. All those in favor of approving, please raise your hands. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to the first discussion and action item, technology status update. This is a discussion item.
All right, so I'm going to introduce Dr. DeSantis for the first big presentation he has as the new Director of Educational Technology. So I will turn it over to Dr. DeSantis, who has the best background besides Sean on this Zoom board.
Thank you so much, Dr. De Silva. Yeah, so this is my first official presentation to the board in this new title, although I've popped in here and there. I'll just get started so we don't waste any time. Let me share my desktop. Can everyone see my desktop with the nice sunset background? Very calming, serenity now. There we go. All right, so welcome to my March 22nd technology update. Quick review from my January presentation where I basically talked about how technology moved from being a main pillar to the main portal, and how we all felt that for a long period of time will be an inappropriate place for technology, and how I can't wait to get us to move forward when COVID is over, school is back to normal. What does technology look like in our district at that point? But I do want to look back and really talk about the incredible work our tech department has done. These are some photos when our tech department was preparing hundreds upon hundreds, a few thousand Chromebooks to be delivered. You could see that line right there where all the parents are picking up their Chromebooks for distance learning. And then literally at the beginning of the school year, kind of turning education on its head and completely coming up with a brand new hybrid classroom system and way to convey information to parents. So again, a huge thank you to my tech crew. They have been amazing during this time, and they continue to be amazing. And just the work that they're doing constantly blows me away. Again, it's an understatement to say that they've done a great job. If you remember my presentation in January, I kind of ended with this slide, and I'm beginning with this slide, where I broke down my 2021-22 plan into three major aspects. The top aspect to me is like the super high need. We need to get this done as soon as possible. And this is what this presentation is going to focus on mostly. We'll talk about a few other things, but I like to call it the quote unquote nuts and bolts of technology for the district. First is the student teacher Chromebooks. They are aging out. We'll talk about that. The other is the rollout of the touch technology into the classrooms. We're moving to ViewSonic boards. We're looking into upgrading other technology throughout the district, which we'll get to in this presentation. Then on the second part, we're working with all the building administrators and streamlining all the technology initiatives, finding possible efficiencies between the curriculum department and the special services department, and improving technology stewardship. And I'll kind of show what that means at the end of the presentation. And last but not least, I've been meeting with the PTA members, talking with lots of parents, teachers, administrators to figure out what we want the district to move post COVID-19. So this here is my technology outlook. I broke it down into three major categories. There's a fourth one at the end, which is the network upgrade, but that's mostly through the capital, and that's kind of already set in stone as part of, we're halfway through a 5-year plan on that. So it's just kind of on autopilot. Hopefully that'll go through fine. But these three major priorities, I'm going to be working closely. I have been working closely for the past few months with Don Norton and using this year's budget to address all of these priorities. First, we have the immediate priority, which is the teacher and student Chromebooks. High priority, which is the classroom technology. And I say an important priority, which is office staff computer setups. So let's start with the first one, the immediate priority, teacher and student Chromebooks. This is not a complete list, but this here is the breakdown of all the products of Chromebooks that we have in the district. For the past 3 weeks, we have been doing a huge task of auditing all the technology in the district. And we have a lot of Chromebooks out there, and it's kind of like putting the plane together while it's flying. We're counting the Chromebooks while the kids are using them, either through home surveys or as the students come into school. We take the Chromebook, we get the serial number off of it, we see what model it is, and then we connect it to their account to make sure we know what we have, because things were given out during the summertime and last spring in kind of a huff. A lot of data wasn't taken, and we just don't know what's out there. This kind of breaks things down into a few areas. If you look at the top, the red Chromebooks, those are no longer supported by Google, and those must be replaced like yesterday. So anything in that orange, those are no longer going to be supported by Google at that date. So if the teacher Chromebooks are no longer going to be supported by Google, meaning no more Chrome updates this June, which is, pretty soon. And then we have a host of these kind of yellow Chromebooks where, we got about a year to them. And then we have those CTL Chromebooks, which I kind of gave them a lime green, where yes, they have about 2 to 3 years left to them, but they do run very slowly. And then anything at the bottom that's green, we feel is going to be fine for a few years. So this kind of breaks us down into all the different products that we have to support. Just when we say we run on Chromebooks, we run on many different Chromebooks, and each of them come with their own kind of quirks and issues. The Chromebook audit that we've done, there we go, is not complete. So at the time of me doing this presentation, this was actually not in your Friday packet. This is the data I've been able to kind of come together today, because today was one of the days that we were able to stop some of the auditing. So this is kind of hot off the press. We did not get to Branchville or Ridgeberry yet, but this kind of breaks down that what we were able to collect. We consider any of those new Chromebooks to be totally fine. The orange here is that kind of should replace category. Red means it must be replaced. And the reason why I say must be replaced is for us to do state testing, let's say the SBAC testing or other testing, it needs to be a secure browser. And these secure browsers only function on the newest version of Chrome. The other issue is when Chrome no longer gets updates, one day you can open up the Chromebook and suddenly Google Meet stops working or Google Docs stops working. There's a lot of issues that can arise when you no longer have a supported device, especially the teacher ones. Now, when I look at these elementary schools, when I look at that orange category, that orange category is leaning towards the lasting a little bit longer. Just so that orange can be like, oh, is it a year to 2 to 3 years? At the elementary schools, because they were given more of the newer Chromebooks because of the distance learning at the end of the summer, they kind of ended up with that batch. However, when I look at the middle schools, we have about 90% in of the middle schools and about 80% of the data from the high school, but this can still kind of paint a general picture of what's happening. The East Ridge and Scotts Ridge, those Chromebooks are leaning more on the sooner than later category of aging out. Of course, red is not good. Those need to be replaced ASAP. And green is good. Gray is, of course, using a personal device, which is fine for most of the time, except when we need to give state testing. State testing must be given through a managed school device. It's kind of funny. The state does give people the option to take it on a personal device, but you basically have to wipe your personal device to turn it into like a state SBAC kiosk. And I don't think anyone's going to do that to their own computer. They're just going to go, hey, give me a Chromebook. So that kind of breaks that down. So what are we doing? We're looking into new Chromebooks. This was this morning where we are testing a whole bunch of potential units. We're stress testing them. We're looking at mostly 14-inch Chromebooks to replace the teacher's one. Most of the 15-inch units are really hard to get right now because of the world semiconductor shortage, and there's another issue that's arising in a moment. We're looking at teacher technology to handle their workload, to, of course, adhere to the state testing standards, and, of course, have reasonable battery life. The old units will, of course, no longer be supported this June. This here is us doing a beta program of some of the new laptops here at Veterans Park. There's Ellen Tuckner giving us a thumbs up. And basically, I got a quick little video I'm going to show you. Right here is us stress testing those Chromebooks. And, in full transparency, we did this beta at Veterans Park with these new Chromebooks. And to be honest, they're not working out that well. And we're going to probably, send them back or figure out something to do with them. And I'll give you a reason why. If you look here in this video, right here on this side, this is the new Chromebook, and this is a newer student one, and it's just taking forever. I don't know if this is coming through. It's taking forever just to load Google Documents. It's still going. It's still going. Right now we are 20 seconds in and it's still loading Google Docs. It's still loading Google Docs. This is painful for our teachers to work on a product like this. 20 plus seconds to open up a Google Doc. And these are they're older Chromebooks and some of the newer Chromebooks. So I kind of did this as my little test. Like these ones run good, these ones run great. The one has the mystery face. It's kind of, it's okay. It could be better. And this kind of brings us to the idea of we really, really have to be careful when we look at items like Chromebooks because of the world semiconductor shortage. They're making new Chromebooks, but with really subpar materials and chips, and they are brand new. It's a 2021 model, but they run really poorly, especially from the amount of multitasking that our teachers are doing. So that's what I would say our most immediate priority that we need to cover. The next priority would be the classroom technology. If you walk through any of our school classrooms in any of the schools, you'll notice that we have a lot of smart boards that are, well, between 8 and 10 years old. We even have some that are over 10 years old throughout the district. If you look at these two models, you can usually spot the 8-year-old ones by having that short throw projector, and then those original ones that have the one in the ceiling about 10, 15 feet away style projector. If you remember, all of the technology was taken out of the middle school years ago, and the teachers were kind of forced to use Chromebooks just like the students. I guess the philosophy then was to have the teachers have the same technology as a student, which is not my philosophy. I believe teachers need robust content creation technologies to be able to teach not only in this environment, but in the future environment. So if we look here, we have the new ViewSonic boards, which have been a big hit, big hit. And it was a necessary buy that thankfully, Dr. De Silva was able to work this out for us to get this past summer so we can do our hybrid classroom. If you look on the side, there's still, I say this is very rough data. These are the rooms still needed to be upgraded. And the reason why I say it's rough data is because the learning spaces have shifted because of COVID. Areas that were once classrooms are no longer classrooms, and areas that weren't classrooms are now being used as classrooms. And we're going to wait this summer to get a real final tally, or at least the beginning of summer, to see what those learning spaces are. I'll be working with all the building administrators once they figure out their learning spaces are. But I do feel confident that the numbers on the screen aren't going to shift drastically. I don't think, RHS is suddenly going to find like 50 new rooms. But if you look, Scotts Ridge and East Ridge, even though we bought so many ViewSonics, they still had some leftover smart boards that a lot of teachers hung on to. They didn't want to give them up. And thank God, because that was able to save us during the summertime when we had to upgrade the middle schools to having those ViewSonics. But now it's time to upgrade those classrooms. A lot of the advantage of the ViewSonic TVs, better resolution, students find them very easy to see. The touch interface is far superior. And then I believe the cost over time is much better. A lot of these smartboard projectors, a year they can go through 2 to 3 bulbs. Those bulbs we know are very expensive. They range from $200 to $300. And then those projectors themselves, especially this year because we're running them so much because of distance learning, they burn out really quickly. There goes $600 out the window. Now we're looking at the price of a TV to run one of these projectors a little bit over a year. And to me, these TVs, I think, will last far longer than these projectors, and they're just a more robust technology. We also notice that the teachers like them because they don't make a lot of background noise, and a lot of students who have auditory issues like them because there's no whirring fan in the background. Lastly, before I get into my closing statements, believe me, we're almost done, is what I like to call an important priority, very important priority. And in my new position, I've gotten to work with our really amazing office staff in all the schools. And I've noticed that the monitors that they're working on are very old, right? Some of these monitors were kind of put in before people had the iPhone, and these monitors are standard definition. The reasoning behind this was to, give them a new computer box and maybe a new keyboard and mouse, but the monitors never changed. So we're running into 2 major issues I see. Issue number one is the monitor's resolutions are so old and so small that a lot of the new software and services that our office workers rely on can no longer be displayed properly. A lot of these programs don't use 400 or 600 by 400 resolution anymore, and so they'll go into certain PowerSchool portals and stuff that just gets cut off. The second reason is these are our office workers. They look at these screens all day long, and these screens were made before blue blocker technology. The resolution's low. It's really hard to see them. And this is something I'd really like to upgrade to also increase their productivity and visual fidelity. Lastly, I would like to move away from the nuts and bolts too much, just to say that I'm also looking into things that aren't device driven. First, I'm really excited to work with our new Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Corey. Really getting excited to figure out how we're going to move the district forward with technology. The administration and teachers have been phenomenal during this time, and I'm really loving to work with them, and their ideas have been great to move us forward. The big thing, a big topic is going to be how do we want to move forward as a district with our one-to-one program? That's a big question that we need to answer in the next few months. To be honest, right now, we are far from having one-to-one. If Connecticut suddenly today just said, oh, everyone needs to take a test on our computers, we can't support that. Either the computers are too old or we just don't have enough. So that's something that we're really going to need to flush out in the not too distant future. The other thing is once we address all of these problems, I would like to start a reasonable technology cycle, replacement cycle throughout the district. I feel like we are very tired of like running technology into the ground and then constantly figuring out how to live in crisis mode. I do not want us to lead but through crisis mode anymore. I want us to lead through forward thinking and planning. I put a big example there because, you know, people are like, oh, is that your point? That's just an example of something we could do. This would be, let's say, classroom or teacher technology. The other thing I want to explore is because we're having, you know, issues in getting good Chromebooks, maybe we want to look into more robust teacher machines. Many other districts have moved to Windows machines or MacBooks. The thing about the Chromebook is, you know, it's a great device. It is cheap. It is easy to implement, but it doesn't have the feature set as, let's say, a MacBook would have, which comes with onboard video editing and photo editing, PDF editing. These are all services we have to purchase in a subscription service for a Chromebook, which comes built into a robust computer. So in that sense, is it kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul? You kind of sit there and think, you know, we're saving money right now, but is it really saving money in the long run? The other thing is the continued stewardship practices, I think, of both being fiscal and with the environment. One huge audit we did before the Chromebook audit was, I'd like to call it the junk audit, where we looked at all of our technology throughout the district to just, we needed to make room. We had so much stuff left over. We haven't thrown things out since over 8 years ago. And we were able to send it to the recyclers, and we got $4,855 from it, which I returned to the town, which then gave me the idea of maybe we should start thinking about a buyback program. If we establish in a few years a really good cycle program where teachers or maybe even members of the community, we can age out products by selling them back or doing a buyback program. And then that way we can return that money to the town. So just an idea that I'm throwing out there, something in a year or two from now when we start establishing product cycles. This way, we're not aging things out till they burn to the ground, and we can have reasonably new technology as the years move on. And last but not least, I'm really excited to find appropriate technologies for our grade levels and subjects. We have a lot of really cool things going on in the district. I urge you to listen to the podcast. There's lots of cool things going on. I'm looking forward to growing our career technology education at the high school. We see lots of really cool stuff. One course I can't wait to start proposing is video production and media production at the high school level. And then below, I'd like to move that into middle school and elementary schools, which is something I know a lot of our LLC people have been doing. So a lot of great work there. So those are the opportunities that are kind of on my heart once we address these other issues. So that is where I'm looking to take the district. And without any further ado, I am ready for your questions.
Thank you, Dr. DeSantis. He's worked
Thank you
hard
for
in
that.
his 2 months of transition.
Yeah.
Thank you for the very colorful presentation. And by the way, I did appreciate getting it a few days early. It does help. There's a little extra work for you all, but it does help to be able to get this in advance, even though it does get changed.
Oh, yeah, it was just, I really wanted to show those Chromebook numbers, and they're not done yet. And then down the road, I can send you a more complete numbers if you want. It's just, I really wanted to show the situation.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad we got it. We got on Friday, and
Yeah.
my first question was going to be how many are these reds, and that you were able to add some. That was good. And I know that there are going to be some questions, and I will assume that Sean is going to start us off.
Good assumption. First, a loaded question that has nothing to do with you.
Oh boy.
How long was the lease on the Chromebooks that we had before? How many years?
Oh, I believe it was 3 to 4 years repeating.
So
It was a 3 year. It's a 3-year
So
lease.
we were doing a 3-year lease on a Chromebook that some of them didn't quite make 3 years, it looks like. So
Yes.
the fact that we're moving those to CapEx is a good idea. I think I'm in agreement there. I love the idea of replacing the smart boards with the touchscreen monitors. Concern is over durability, because if those get hit, they get hit.
Yeah.
That's an expensive hit. It's not like just a screen on the wall. So I don't know what we're doing about that. I love the fact that you're addressing some of our technology debt. The fact that we have 15-year-old networking kit out there that has really bad security, end of life, end of sale, end of support problems is good, but we need to keep up on that. So I think what you started, we need to do through the entire physical plant. Every piece of kit, know what its end of life is before it hits there, because the network stuff that we've got in the capital budget to replace now should have been replaced 5 years ago. And we've been kicking the can down the road. And it's expensive to do it right up front, but it needs to be done right up front. So we don't end up, there are school districts that were held hostage by ransomware this year in Connecticut because they had poor security on old devices. We can't be caught like that. So I'm glad you're addressing some of that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's part of the plan. It's one of the first things that when I took the position, my colleague Dave Moran and our network admin Josh, it was basically like, this needs to be addressed now. It is definitely on our top priority. It was in our capital. It's a big thing. It's you're right. They appear to be very expensive, but the alternative, I think, is even more expensive when it doesn't work. And, I think the philosophy was kind of like the old car, it's still good. It still drives down to work. It's only 2 miles away. But now, I need that car to go across country. It's not appropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The last parting shot is the monitors for the staff that are the 4:3, the old aspect ratio. Yeah, they've got to go. They're not expensive now. This is not a.
I know.
So, yeah, that's an easy one. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? So just to one of Sean's points, the boards that were installed this year, any concerns at all with those boards? Did any of them get hit? Any of them break? Any issues? The ones that I know it's only been a year, but I'm just curious.
0 issues. The teachers who have them love them. It's created, a rift between the teachers who have them and the teachers who have the old smart boards. The other smart boards, I believe, were they would break from time to time, but they were a very thin kind of detective layer, kind of almost like a Mylar. And if someone threw a tennis ball, one of those, they'd break. So I would actually say that the TVs are a little bit more robust than the wafer in front of the smart board. And a smart board may appear to look fine, but that touch area could not work. But 1 year in, they've been fine. But we've also had them in drips and drabs throughout the district. In fact, my old classroom had it years ago, and it's been fine. They're pretty solid. They're not like your flat screen, the super thin ones you see in Costco's. This is they're like this thick. They're a little hardier.
That's fair. And I'm old enough to remember when the smartboard divide was a thing and teachers that had smartboards were the cool kids.
Yeah.
Mhm. Sean, I think the leasing was 3 years, but I just want to be clear. It wasn't like in 3 years we got a new, like a car lease where you get a new lease. You're
Mhm.
basically purchasing them out and spending our money across 3 years. Is that accurate, Dawn?
That is correct. There was a large purchase up front and then they were paid off. The lease was a payment, a 3-year payment for the cost of purchasing all those. But if I remember correctly, each year, at least the last couple of years that I've been here, they were purchasing new, but not replacing any others for the most part. It was just trying to get one-to-one with different grades. So those that got them 2-3 years ago, we weren't using the leasing to replace those. It was just to keep going forward, getting new ones for trying to get more one-to-one.
So it took us 3 years to pay them off. And by the time we were done paying them off, they were junk, but we never replaced them. Some of the ones that are the lower quality on Wes's presentation, I won't have him go back, but when he saw the list of the Chromebooks, there was a significant amount that were given us, not a significant, a small amount that was given to us by the state. Those are actually the lower quality ones.
The CTLs.
The CTLs, yeah.
Well, and just an observation as you're doing your testing is I find, and this is your mileage may vary, those with 4 and 6 gigs of RAM do better than those with 2. So it's not always processor, it's sometimes RAM. So, and that's where the money is.
Yeah, we're learning that what they do with the world semiconductor shortage is you'll get a computer that has really good stats, but there's something in the CPU called cache, and normally there's about 8 megabytes of cache, but these come with 1 megabyte. And they just run really, 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 really slow. So you have a brand new computer that's running like a 6-year-old computer, and it's just because they're trying to move product.
Yep.
Other questions?
I'll just say, nice job, Wes, for being in the role for 2 months. I'm really looking forward to seeing your application strategy with the teachers on the curriculum side that you guys pull together. I think there's probably, to your point, some cost savings there. I think you've got the right first steps in terms of standard operating practices in this space. I really appreciate you thinking about the teachers' materials because they clearly need better machines. I would agree with you on that front. And so thank you for taking such a proactive approach on this and thinking through it, because hardware is a big cost effort, but these kids need appropriate machines too. So thank you for working through this.
Thank you so much.
Good comment. Rachel, I saw your hand, and then Kathleen.
So first, thank you so much, Wes, for your presentation. I love the data points which you presented. I think it's such a transparent way to communicate to us and to the community. So thank you for that. I do have just 2 questions. So my first question is in 2 parts. Does the high priority classroom tech include subscriptions that could assist with the remediation as well as the acceleration of skills for our students? And then my follow-up to that would be, if yes, is there a plan for individual building levels to communicate that out to families, especially if use is allowed over the summer?
So the high priorities, or the red alert priorities that I kind of gave, those are so high priority. We need to continue the fidelity of education. Well, if we don't replace these, we cannot teach. Like, we won't have working computers. That's why I put it. It's like the top of the pyramid. It's the red circle. Those other things you were saying, it's something I'm going to be working with Dr. Hanaway and Corey on as we implement it through the curriculum budget, through the tech budget. These are things we've already just started having meetings on certain strategies, what services we want to look at, where the redundancies are. It's definitely something we've been working at. I just want to give a shout out to Susie on, I really enjoy working in such a transparent environment. I'm showing everything. This is everything we have, right down to the product of Chromebooks we're using. So I enjoy being transparent because that makes my job easy. So everyone knows where we're at. But this is something that I'm sure in later board meetings, we will be working I'll be working with our curriculum leaders and our special services leaders to bring those up. But just off the side, we have already streamlined our assistive technology verticality, how that gets deployed out to students. And in the past 2 months, it's been really easy. Again, because of the semiconductor shortage, when a kid needs an iPad, it still takes 3 weeks instead of whatever, but you know, we're getting there.
Just one more.
then I think you-
sorry, Rachel, if I can, just the world semiconductor shortage thing. Wes, if you say it one more time.
So sorry. So sorry.
I feel like there's something serious that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So there is a world semiconductor shortage, yes.
It's actually a
Oh,
thing, and
it's bad.
it's bad.
Yeah.
It sounds it. It sounds it.
They're literally building pickup trucks without features because they can't get the chips to build them.
Okay, well then that truly is bad. But just, Rachel, one piece that I just want to make sure that we answer all seriousness is that in terms of the digital tools that kids will have access to over the summer, families will hear more about that from Ms. Gillette as we transition into summer programming and beyond. So if they have access to some of our digital tool, if they have access to our digital tools now, they'll have access to them in the summer as well.
Thank you so much. And then my next question is, it has to do with compatibility, and I think you just touched upon it, Wes. Are we aware of any assistive technologies that pair better with the ViewSonic instead of the smartboard that we should be investing in for our students, especially with special needs? Anything not going to work that we currently have that we should invest in for the future?
So the reason why we did our research and chose the ViewSonics is because they're fully compatible with all smartboard technology and software. So the ViewSonic uses an open standard. And so we have teachers who have made entire lessons and things in the smart notebook software, smartboard software, especially a lot of our special ed teachers. And they get a ViewSonic and they're like, oh no. And I'm like, nope, just turn it on and it works great. So that's the reason why we picked the ViewSonic brand, because it is fully compatible with all legacy stuff that we were using before.
Great. Thank you so much, Wes.
Oh, no problem.
Kathleen, you had a question?
Well, it's basically a comment. First of all, thank you for that. And I really do look forward to when we're back in the regular mode of education, that you're going to be able to look at the silver linings, which I know you'll be able to, and apply that to using technology as an innovative tool rather than a necessary mode of education. And I really look forward to working with you or listening to you and hearing about that going forward, because I think if anything can come out of this year of technology is we can look at the silver linings and build on those. So, and I heard that in your voice. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much. It was a very informative, well thought out presentation.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have a learning models update.
Yep. So Dr. Hanaway in 1 second will share her screen. And
So
while
John Mansfield.
John will share her screen.
Yes.
And while Dr. Hanaway is presenting tonight, we have on the line our reopening committee, in particular the actually I even see our elementary representatives as well. So hopefully we're here to answer any questions that families, that the board might have, that I'm sure you're hearing from families, because I've heard from a few families over the weekend. So we eagerly look forward to your questions, and know that families will receive communications after today. All right, so Dr. Hanaway, all yours.
Thank you. So everyone can take a step back to maybe like 1997 with my PowerPoint in comparison with what Wes just did. So tonight we have, in addition to our central office colleagues, we have Mike Agid, assistant principal at the high school, Jill Katkosen, elementary principal at Scotland, Lisa Fries, assistant principal at Scotts Ridge, and Trisha Ranieri, principal at East Ridge. So they're going to join me along with the other central office administrators in adding some flavor and specifics and details to the overview that I'm going to provide. So we're going to talk a bit tonight about our plan for a full in-person return beginning April 19th for East Ridge, Scotch Ridge, and the high school. Thanks, John. Okay, so the first question is why April 19th? We have had many conversations beginning really in January, as soon as we returned from break, about this concept of could we at some point, what would be the context in which we would determine that we could fully reopen for secondary that would be different than when we made this decision in the fall? So how would the context be different? What would be the parameters and the variables that would lead to that? And so the main parts of these decisions at this point is a general decrease since we've come back from break in the prevalence rates since January. Erin Cook is on the line with us as well. And if need be, if questions come up, we have had a local uptick in numbers in the last week or so, if there are questions about that. So allow me to take a step back and say, why do we think April 19th as of tonight? Everything that we're sharing tonight is what we're considering for April 19th, knowing that we're going to have to continue watching the data with regards to the prevalence numbers to see if by the time April 19th comes, if we can enact this plan. And so as we get towards the end of the conversation, we'll talk about what can families expect as we get closer to April 19th with regards to communication from the district. So in general, we've had a decrease in prevalence rates since January, and that's been relatively consistent. The percentage of our staff, has been fully vaccinated upon return from April break is a very high percentage. We will have the ability to utilize outdoor areas as the weather warms far more than we do now. Our transmission rates in terms of individuals who get COVID from one another from being in proximity together within the building has been very low since the beginning of January. And then, I think most importantly is this risk reward analysis that we do on I feel like an hourly basis at this point, in terms of needing to support our students to return to the structure of a school day, to support them social, emotionally, and academically before the year's out. It's almost the risk reward analysis of, if not then, when, before the end of the school year. And the determination we've come to is that if not April 19th, when we get back from break, we're having a very hard time seeing when that could be. And we think that could be incredibly detrimental to students to not have the opportunity for as strong of a finish of the school year as possible. And then we have many weekly meetings with many different groups between the Department of Health. We follow every single week. We work with Ed Briggs in the Department of Health and Dr. Ahern every week. We look at our daily rates, and we get feedback on what's happening within the buildings, not only in terms of positivity rates, but also the impacts of quarantines. Next slide. So what do we know right now with regards to what this return would mean? So social distancing is the mitigating measure that will change as a result of returning fully. At the middle school, specifically at Scotts Ridge, we know this is the location that will have the least capacity to socially distance. And in many cases, there may not even be 3 feet. We want to be completely transparent with the community that it's not even guaranteed for all circumstances all the time that students will be with 3 feet or more from one another. There may be nuanced or minimal periods of time when students may be within 3 feet of each other. And if you want to talk about examples of what that might be, I would ask, as we get to that point, administrators to jump in to give examples that's relevant to your buildings. But in most cases, we will achieve 3 feet. And in a lot of cases, we will achieve 6 feet, depending on the class, the enrollment, and then how many parents opt to send their children back in full. All of this is with the caveat of how many families opt to send their children back in full. Mask wearing will continue to be required even if individuals are fully vaccinated. Students will have the eligibility, and I can't remember which vaccine it is off the top of my head, Erin, I know you know, to receive 16 or older to receive the vaccine after May 1st. but we will continue mask wearing. As we have learned, aside from social distancing, mask wearing is the #1 mitigating measure that has been effective, and we think very, very much so. The reason why our in-school transmission has been very low is because we've had high mask wearing compliance. And then, as I mentioned in the last slide, the trajectory of our prevalence data over the next few weeks is going to determine whether or not we can do this, or after we reopen, if heaven forbid, we have to return to a hybrid. So nothing is a done deal, just like at the elementary schools right now. I'll remind the community that the elementary schools have been back in full since mid-February. And we have, on a week-to-week basis, studied them differently than how we've studied the secondary schools, because we know that they have had the vast majority of their population in person, which is not like secondary. Most elementary parents, when the opportunity was given to return in full, took advantage of that. So we're going to, after tonight, I think the middle schools and the high school are basically ready for this meeting to be over, to press go on a survey to go out to families to elicit from them their preference with regards to their children returning to in-person fully, or to remain remote for the remainder of the year. So the big difference here for the experience and the choice for families is that we would no longer have separate cohorts like A and B, where students come for part of the week. Students would be part of the full in-person or part of the remote cohorts. And this is the biggest, we've already started to receive feedback from teachers and from the community, in which we have many teachers who are parents in the community, in which, that this decision is a tough one in terms of deciding to come back in full or to remain remote. Unless approval has been granted, students will no longer be allowed to elect to be remote for individual days. Like, something happened today and I'd like to be remote even though I'm an in-person student. That's really going to be a rarity. I'll give an example of a situation in which it may be appropriate and it may be approved. Would be, say, if an older sibling at the high school had to watch a younger sibling at the elementary school because the younger sibling had been put in quarantine, and both parents work and the older sibling is needed for childcare. That older sibling may be, in that instance, would be provided the opportunity to be a remote learner, but that's a nuanced situation. We are asking parents to commit to a choice throughout the end of the year outside of extenuating circumstances, because we think that we are in the time in which optimizing the last quarter is paramount for being in person. I'm going to pause here for a quick second and, just for context, ask Mike Agin, I know you're on the line, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and share with us, as of today, where are we with the number of kids who are in each cohort? So A, cohort B, cohort C is our full remote students, and cohort D are our students who attend 5 days a week.
Yep. Yeah. So currently in cohort A, as of today, we have 259 students. Cohort B has 217 students. Our remote learners in cohort C, that's 793 students. And cohort D is 308 students. So it's 308 that are coming in 5 days a week. So that's, we've seen that cohort D grow by about 100 students over the last month.
Thank you. And so I think, at least as far as the high school goes, really the remote learners are obviously the big swing factor here. Because of that, the minority of students have elected to stay in A or B. Trisha and Lisa, do you mind sharing similarly for the middle schools?
Sure. Scottsridge sort of has an even spread. Cohort A, we have 137 kids. Cohort B, 132 kids. Cohort C, 111, that's fully remote. And cohort D, 160 that are in 5 days a week.
Trisha?
Hi there. Yes. So in cohort A, we have 152. Cohort B, we have 145. Cohort C, we have 131. In cohort D, we have 111. And similar to Mike, if we were to go back in time to February, we had about 70 students in cohort D. So that has grown to 111, attending 5 days a week.
Thank you. And I think a big difference here is that the high school last month offered the 5-day option because of the number of remote learners to anybody who wanted to access it. So we saw a pretty significant growth in a short period of time with that. Okay, next slide, John, please. Okay, so we're going to conduct the survey this week to determine the exact number of students returning. Staff will be notified. A consideration, depending on the number of students, particularly at the high school who are electing to come back in full, is whether or not a staggered return over the first few days might be a good move, particularly for the benefit of 9th graders. But that is, very much TBD right now. It's going to depend on the responses. We're keeping in mind that our AP exams begin for students May 3rd, and the senior internship at the high school begins on May 17th. So another question is, why April 19th? Why not come back a week after that or 2 weeks after that, given that there's going to be April break? And at least one factor of many in terms of optimizing the last quarter of the year is right there, exams and internship for students. Open campus remains an option for grades 9 through 12, which has been successful as a strategy so far this year. The high school adjusted its quarantine rules last month to allow for, instead of whole class quarantine, if there was a positive case within a classroom, to move to only quarantining those individuals within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. And that's because we had such low attendance. We were having 4 kids in a room. It's pretty easy to tell who was going to be there. East Ridge and Scotts Ridge is also going to move to this, but this may necessitate, depending on the class, using something like seating charts so that we have accurate information on student attendance, and that's going to depend on the enrollment and the size of the room. For group works, labs, offices, we're going to aim to remind staff not to spend more than 15 minutes within 6 feet of a student. That's an ideal. We recognize that a lot of these things are very hard in real time to effectuate, but to the extent that that can be avoided. We are still having staff getting appointments. We have a very, very high vaccination rate among staff. And again, students over 16 will be eligible later in the spring. Joe Moritz and his team, I know, have been fast at work and are very eager for the results of the survey as well, because we have to bring a lot of furniture back into these classrooms. We removed a lot of furniture to space them out. So each room is being assessed for its space and the amount of furniture that would be needed to be moved in. We are still going to continue with the staggered arrival and dismissal as we have the 20 minutes in the beginning and the end of the day, but teachers will be in their rooms. Say for the high school, this is just a time example for the high school to welcome students at 7:20, even though period 1 is not going to start until later on. Right now, we're still not going to be offering breakfast. As far as lunch goes, in all schools, we're looking to increase the space options of where lunch takes place. And then providing outdoor seating and satellite spaces for lunch if needed. We know that outdoor seating, is really going to depend on what the next 3 or 4 weeks look like if we get snow, because that can be very soppy, muddy, not ideal places for kids to move in and out of, and for tents to be put up on if the ground's not solid. But we also are looking at satellite spaces inside the building if needed. We're still going to institute mask breaks, hand sanitizing, and social distancing. Social distancing is not out the window. We're still going to enforce it because in many situations we will be able to. And again, mask wearing is not going to be relaxed for any individuals who are vaccinated. And we're encouraging, and I know that they're doing this, the middle schools and the high school, they had their own kind of smaller reopening committees in which they were receiving feedback at the staff level about how it's going. And so those are going to begin again as well. And I think those are all slides. Yeah. Thanks, John.
Thank you. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions on this. Who wants to start us off? Tina.
Oh, Tina, you're on mute.
Of course. Okay, before I forget, I just want to give a big, I want to call out the RHS staff and faculty. As a parent, as a community member, I truly appreciate the decision for them, the decision that they made for not to have finals. They truly did put the emotional and mental needs of the kids first. I can't speak for every parent, but I can speak for myself and some of the parents that I've talked to. So I do appreciate it. So thank you for making the decision. Thank you for putting our kids' emotional and mental needs first, especially because it's been such an awkward, rough, tough year. So I wanted to make that a public shout out. So thank you to everybody at RHS who was part of that decision. Okay, my first question is, sorry, it's a long day. I've been hearing this, and I do not disagree that children need to be back at school. But of course, the concerns start, right? The first question is, we are asking high school, I guess I have a bunch of questions. High school is it's a heavy population. Assuming you survey the parents and most of these kids come back, social distancing is not possible. You admitted that as well. 3 feet will not be possible. Yes, CDC says that the two big mitigating factors are the 3 feet and the mask wearing. So when we take away one of the mitigating factors, we're just left with one, which is possible in some cases and may not. And I'm assuming majority of the parents who are surveyed will say that the kids at Scotts Ridge, RHS, and East Ridge will come back. So does that raise the risk factor, right? I mean, and then it leads into my second question. We're thinking about a possible return after spring break. Now the travel rules are relaxed. People will travel more. They don't have to test themselves. So will we be seeing an uptick in cases? And because these kids are back, will this mean more quarantining? Will this mean more testing? Will this mean more stress for families? Because the more testing, even if it's one child and you're quarantining the entire class because of just the way the class built, I'm just using this as an example, it does add stress to the family. It adds emotional stress. It adds the test. You got to figure out you're quarantining. So those are my first 2 questions. I mean, I have a bunch of them, but we'll just start.
I'm happy to jump in and then ask, Susie, anybody else to follow. And I'm going to try to remember them in the order that you said. So I can't. So I'm going to just hit them as they come to my brain. So as far as the timing and break, so when we considered whether or not to close around holidays earlier in the school year, the piece that we kept coming back to as a district with their medical advisor and with Dr. Ahern is that traveling isn't really the deal. People are doing it locally or they're doing it traveling. So the notion of how much folks stay with whatever is safest, however that's defined for the situation, that traveling or not traveling hasn't actually been a huge factor in whether or not, if somebody's going to decide to be maskless with unvaccinated people in close proximity. That can happen. That's happening right now close by, or it's happening when they travel. I'm not dismissing that travel exposes you to other things and plane rides and hotels and all of those pieces, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate the behavior, because the behavior is happening locally as well. So that's one piece that didn't fully convince us to avoid right after the April break. It's not something we didn't consider, but it also is just the other thing I would look at as far as coming back in full. So what I said was that 3 feet can't be guaranteed all the time. 3 to 6 feet, and in some cases 6 feet, will be achievable, no doubt. But if we look at our elementary schools, we have classes in some cases of 24, 25 kids. And while we've absolutely had quarantines and we've had situations of spread, on the whole, we have not seen tremendous in-school transmission. Now I'm going to say this tonight, and I'm going to eat my words. And it would be my words, not Susie's words, so that's fine. But in general, when we looked at our elementary schools, that we have had really low in-school transmission. So it's not that we say nothing will happen, but we've had months and months and months of kids. And I think if there's anybody who is a little bit having a harder time with mask compliance and a little bit having a harder time staying away from each other, and they're eating together in the same classrooms, it's the elementary schools. So those are two of your questions, but I think there were other questions that I'm missing.
No, I think those were the two, but the only piece I'd add about the April 19th, there's nothing to say, like Dr. Hanaway started the presentation tonight with, as of right now, there's nothing to say that something won't change. And we're going to continue to recommend strongly, and Erin has included in my Friday newsletter, that families upon returning from travel have the rapid test and submit that to their school nurse. That ensures that we're just a level up in terms of safety, right? So we would ask and encourage, highly recommend that all those that travel, faculty, children, have the rapid test. On the elementary side, when we talk about 3 to 6 feet and we talk about capacity of 24 kids, even if the capacity was 20 kids or 15 kids, we know what elementary school children are like. And, Wes talked about transparency earlier. Let's be transparent. Little people cannot socially distance. Big people can't even socially distance. Little people can't. There are times in which, even in those spaces where we have 6, 12, 20 feet, that kids get closer, and they're closer than 3 feet. And so what we hope is that those other mitigating measures that we have in place in our schools are doing their part. At some point, we have to transition back to real life, and real life is bringing all of our kids to school because that's where they learn best. And so our hope is that we can have them all back in by April 19th and finish the year off strong and healthy. But obviously, there's still a choice for families this year.
Nora?
I just want to thanks Dr. Hanaway and everyone. I have heard a lot of comments from particularly senior parents who are really excited about the opportunity to have their kids return as seniors for the last 4 weeks before their internship begins. And I agree with Dr. Hanaway in the description of the risk reward analysis and the idea that getting kids back before the end of the year is crucial to that social emotional piece of the puzzle. And I would just add that, the idea of these middle school and high school kids not going full in until possibly September would be detrimental, I think, both academically and socially and emotionally. So thank you for attempting to make this happen. And for the seniors, I think it's huge to spend their last couple of weeks of high school in high school.
Rachel.
Liz, I have a question going back to lunch. I know you talked about this, about increasing the space options and then outdoor seating. Specifically at Scotts Ridge Middle School, how will they be eating lunch? Will they be in their classroom like elementary school children or outside?
No, and Lisa knows the space so much better than me. I'm gonna let her speak to that.
Yeah, so Rachel, they are going to continue to eat by team in the cafeteria. So typically we would have 200 kids in the cafeteria. If we were all in, we would have 100 in the cafeteria, and we have marked the tables. So we have the double tables that fold up, long rectangles, and we have 3 at each rectangular table. So when you're facing forward, there is nobody directly across the table from you.
And to the extent there is another space adjacent to the main cafeteria where we can include, if there's a larger wave, an overflow of students, so that we can maximize the space.
And then at East Ridge Middle School, it would be the same by team in the cafeteria?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
East Ridge has a much larger cafeteria than Scotts Ridge in size.
as I said, a bunch of questions, and I hope that's okay because I really think parents have concerns. So I do want to bring them up so that everybody who's watching can have some of them addressed. I'm sure there will still be more questions. I don't disagree. I think for senior parents, it makes complete sense. I wouldn't want my child to be a senior and end the school year not being able to go to school. Completely understand. And I've said this from the beginning, ever since I've joined the board, children need to be back in school. I support that. But I'm trying to bring up some concerns that parents have. And that's why I keep repeating that. I'm hoping that more I ask, more you can address it, more parents feel a little calm. Totally aside, the fact that there were 700 plus kids who were cohort C at high school, that's a huge number. I'm shocked. I had no idea, I'll be honest. And I'm just curious, did anybody ever try to find out why? Is it because it was convenient? Is it because they could sleep more? Is it because it was easier to manage the workload, or they could just—
High school did survey.
Oh, they did.
And it's been a little while.
Yes.
I know some folks here may have
share
gotten surveyed, but they were
because I'm
surveyed in
shocked
terms of
with that number, like
why their choice. And it was vast majority, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And again, there were many options provided, and in some cases, even the options may not have been exactly what every family's choice was. But in the vast majority of responses was frustration with the quarantine, being quarantined.
Yeah, the other add-on I would say, Tina, is, and I do think that there are some students that have become accustomed to the routine, the structure that they have in the virtual environment. And let's be real. There was a time period when kids would come to school and have their teacher on a screen, right? So I'm coming to physical school, sitting in a not so comfortable chair to see my teacher on a screen, and or not have my peers in school, which is another element to this challenge that we're having. And, ultimately, I don't know if that 700 plus kids will continue on the virtual experience. Obviously, I want them back to school, but everybody has a decision this year in terms of their choice. But ultimately, for the other, 700 or so, 750, depending upon the day, it's not that much fun coming to a big high school if you're not going to have your social group or a social group, or you're sitting at lunch alone. So bringing kids back when it's safe to do so, ultimately, I think will change that experience for kids. And so I'm hopeful that they now feel a little bit more comfortable understanding the structures that will be in place. Spring is here, the outdoor spaces are open, and that they're willing to come back. Because I think that it just changed over time, right? As they were here, and then there was a lot of quarantine, the outdoor spaces went away, my teacher's on a screen. Okay, now we're transitioning into a different environment again. And so the experience should look and feel different. Hopefully it will.
So I have a couple of questions. First, I've gotten a lot of quick comments from parents.
Sorry, can I just end it and then you can go?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Okay, or I can let you go. Okay.
Go right ahead.
I think the one thing that I do, which I've heard from parents is, and because of this entire year, this has been a year of loss, right? No matter what way, whatever you look at it, loss of what we felt was normal. And when there's loss, there is grief, and we process grief differently, depending on how a family has gone through this pandemic. Some might have had to deal with it strongly, some not so much. So I think there is acceptance that we're coming to the end is also not going to be a passive activity, right? It's not something passively some people can accept. It really depends on your level of loss. So I think the question that some parents have been, I've read and I've heard, we've got emails is the lack of flexibility, right? We've taken the flexible piece of it. And again, I get where you're coming from. I don't disagree that children need to be back in school, but I'm just trying to highlight some parent concerns so that you can talk about it. It is, we're taking the flexible piece out. We gave these kids the option. We have almost drawn a hard line that you have to make a choice. And yes, it helps in structure. It helps you make a decision, of course. But there are some kids who have not stepped into that school since the start. They're conditioned, for lack of a better word, because of family, because of whatever, because of news, I want to say, of just being home. So that or maybe there are parents who do look at screen or do look at data at infection rates and say, okay, we've not had infection for 3 weeks. I can send my child back. And again, numbers go up because of various reasons. They pull their kid back. So when you take away that flexibility for parents, I think that's where the other concerns are rising. Why now? Why we're taking away the out of the box thinking when we're so close to the end? And this is not me, please, I would make this clear. I'm just trying to highlight parent concerns so that you can talk about it. Why the hard line in the sand now when we're so close to the end, and we should just finish as positive as we can, as out of the box as we can, as, you know, as flexible as we were, if you will.
Yeah, so I hope that the remainder of the year remains positive, or as positive as it can. But the reality is when we transitioned from a hybrid to a full experience for our elementary kids, it was either you're full or you're in, because the best analogy I can think of at this hour at night, the ping pong is not helpful to anyone. It's not helpful to the teachers who are looking to plan and provide an experience. It's not helpful to the students who don't know who's in their class. And the other piece of it is that when we reflected, we say, okay, if a child or a parent is making a decision to send their child to school, let's just say on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because it's safe enough to do so, it's not less safe on Tuesday than Thursday, right? The probability, sure, when you're in school more often, the probability of you being exposed and being placed in quarantine, sure, is higher, but it's not less safe necessarily. And so ultimately, we believe that from the learning experience as a whole, you need to make a decision. If that's the flexibility that you're speaking of. The other challenge, Tina, that came with some of the, or the feeling of less flexibility has been that, you know, you've been able to stay home when you're tired from the night before. We never allowed that. We just now, which is what's happening is we're seeing an increase, and it's becoming more. And that's, by the way, K-12. That's not just limited to secondary, but we're seeing an increase in, I'm not going to go to school today because I stayed up late last night, so therefore I'm going to hop on virtually, even though that's not the learning model I'm in. So teachers, in terms of their preparation, are not prepared for the extra student or two or three, or kids coming in and out of a period, right? And what that looks like. And so it's not that we're becoming less flexible really as a whole, but we're really asking for parents to understand and tend to the rules that have been there all along, because it's becoming more and more problematic. And as the spring season hits, the reality is I think we'll see more and more of it, right? It's a nice day. Maybe I can go to school a little bit later because I have a free first period, or whatever the case may be. And so the circumstances are different for every family, and we're not here to be rigid. We serve families and kids and faculty. That's our job. Ultimately, everything we do, everybody on this Zoom call works in service of those three people, not ourselves. And so it's not that we want to be inflexible, but what we also serve to do is to provide a learning experience that makes sense for the kids that are physical and the kids that are virtual. And so therefore we had to manage the expectations and follow through.
Jonathan, last one, I promise, and then I'll let everybody
You're
else.
good. Carry on.
I think it's, I mean, as I said, it's not anecdotal, it's not about me, but I wanted to raise concerns so that you can talk about it. As we are inching back to normal, you know, at least for adolescent kids, their coping mechanisms is their social group. So I'm glad that you're thinking about it. You're thinking about summer school. You're thinking about pushing that, because that's how these kids cope, right? Their coping mechanisms is beyond adults, if you will. It's with their peers and social. So if we can push that, I think I get that. So I'm glad that you're thinking about it. And I do appreciate the fact that you are talking about that. This is not written in stone, it's in flux. And if there are concerns, that you will be willing to address it. So I just want to say that so that everybody hears, if parents are watching, if you have concerns, I think this is the time to email the superintendent. And just to make clear, operations is the day-to-day, it's not the Board of Ed's purview. We only ask questions, and that's what I'm attempting to do. We don't make decisions, because I don't want emails saying, you know, you supported this and you supported that. So just making sure everybody understands we ask questions on your behalf, but if you have concerns, you should email the superintendent and the reopening committee. So,
Or email your principal, because they do know children best. And honestly, I'm not deferring, but they do know the children best, and they know the families and the family dynamics. And so sometimes there are, you know, rules are rules, but there are some variability with family circumstances that we naturally have to support, right? But that doesn't mean it's the norm. It means there are very certain circumstances in which we haven't considered or we may have missed, and we need to tend to that family. But again, those are very specific to each family, and they should reach out to their school principal. And any, of course, any global things, you can reach out to me or any one of my cabinet members.
Sean?
Quick question on, if presuming we get a significant amount of people headed back, what does transportation look like? We haven't kind of addressed how do people get there? What do the buses look like? And are we prepared to have 87.3% of parents drive their kids? What does the parking lot look like?
Those are good questions. So we started working with our transportation department, Sean, to navigate the reality of having our both cohorts come back. When we survey families, we'll have a better picture of that. A, if they're coming back, and B, how they're coming back to school. In terms of arrival dismissal, I think we're pretty well prepared for what that will look like at the secondary level in terms of planning. So I don't anticipate that will be a large concern, but
We planned in the fall for far more cars coming through, which is why we rerouted where buses go as compared with cars, so that the cars don't hold the buses up. So what's most important is that those buses go so that the runs can continue to the second, third, fourth waves. And then, Scottsbridge and the high school, have begun conversations around the overflow of cars, particularly from Scottsbridge later in the morning, to make sure that it doesn't keep individuals who are coming in and out of the high school parking lot, whether it be period 2 on.
I don't think we anticipate any changes in
No.
Sean, was there a second part of your question that I may have missed?
No, just transportation in general. You addressed the elementary. What does middle school and high school look like?
We're actually speaking of secondary. The elementary have been full.
Okay,
So,
gotcha. So they're good already.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jill might say, oh, but yes, we're pretty good.
Okay.
I just have a couple of questions left. I did hear from a few parents that the hybrid model has worked well for them. And that's no longer an option under this new plan, right? It's in or out. And that's because hybrid worked because there was cohorting. So if you were going and you were hybrid, it was because you were comfortable being with one group of students and not the full school. And so cohorting will be gone. So there's no reason to have a hybrid option at this point, correct?
That's correct.
And then on the flexibility piece, there was from the superintendent.
Yes, Jonathan, if I may, at this point, our high school has opened it up to all students could have been attending, right? As of now, they haven't been, and that's unfortunate. But the reality is that in many ways, the cohorting has gone out the window already at RHS because we have cohort D, who is attending 5 days.
So from a COVID perspective, cohorts A and B are in cohort D.
At our RHS, right.
And then from the superintendent communication to parents last Friday around this flexibility question, it was stated that you can no longer log into school remotely from vacation. That's not a no longer, is it? That's a as a reminder.
So yes, I think there was a little bit of confusion as a no longer versus a reminder. And so let me just provide a little bit of context to what we've been experiencing, or what we've been experiencing and what has increased over time, hence my reminder, right? We've experienced the child that's on holiday, virtual learning from a pool, which is great, but incredibly distracting for everybody else. We have families that have looked to rent their homes here in Ridgefield, therefore us perhaps having more students, right? And they're in their second home somewhere else. And so when I say you had to be sleeping in Ridgefield, it's because we're accounting for a population of students that live in Ridgefield. And so that rule has been here long before COVID. You have to sleep in Ridgefield in order for you to access our education. Not to mention the flip-flopping of I'm in, I'm late, I'm coming back, and the amount of prep, and this is again, a K-12 issue, the amount of prep that we're asking of our teachers. First of all, they can't do it in time. You know, we have kids that are just showing up in a virtual environment that have never been there before. And so therefore they don't have the materials. They weren't sent home. The bags weren't ready. And all of a sudden they're appearing on a screen. And just like me, right? If I was teaching and all of a sudden I had a new student or a student that's normally in school, I'm not going to block them out. I'm going to keep them. But now I'm trying to engage with them in a different way. And it's just not fair. It's not fair to the kids that are in school. It's not fair to the teacher, and it's not fair to the children on the digital device or on the screen. And so all of these were reminders, things that we had in place from the beginning. And listen, we're humans. We've had a lot of flexibility with this, right? Because if I don't feel well or I'm sniffly, I can jump on my screen and not lose a day of learning, right? And that's okay. We still want that. But at the same time, do we stretch that flexibility too much, or are we having too many folks looked for that flexibility that it's impacting the experience for all kids? And so really my Friday memo was a reminder. And for some, I think it felt like something new, but it really wasn't. Just given the number of individuals that are asking for something new every day, it's not reasonable. And just another piece to this is we are transitioning. You know, there's no doubt that we're going to be transitioning to a new experience in the fall. And there may be some pieces of this experience that are still there, that are lingering. But ultimately, our goal is to have schools open in a more traditional way. And if that's the case, I think we all have to start conditioning ourselves a bit to having that experience be more like what it's really intended to be. And it's not intended to be this back and forth, because we don't have the staff to prepare and plan to provide an experience that makes it worthwhile for a child to be in school or log on.
Thank you. Kathleen.
Just a quick question. I'm assuming, I understand that it's either remote or in school, but what if a family or a child has had an exposure issue and they're not ill, but they need to quarantine? Would they be able for those 10 days to go remote and then come back to school?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And we don't want them in school if they are sick. And we don't want them in school if they're quarantined. And we don't want them in school if they have COVID symptoms. They should stay home and log on. It's not that we don't want them in school. We want them in school. We always want them in school, but we don't want them in school. So stay home and log on. But if you're going to go on holiday, enjoy your holiday. You know, we don't want you to go on vacation when we're in session, but if that's what your family is intending to do, then there's a reason your family is intending to do that, right? And so figure it out with your child's teacher, your school principal. Again, not what we want, but if that's what your goal is to do, and we have those requests. I had that request today. My vacation week is a different vacation week than my child's, and therefore I had to take that week off. I'd like them to log on. It's a vacation week. That's what your family has to do. Again, not necessarily what we want, but we understand. Let them holiday. Upon return, we'll get them caught up on what they need to get caught up on. Hopefully it doesn't exceed the attendance and truancy policy and all that other fun stuff, but I won't dig into that. But ultimately, we just can't have that. And just imagine if we're all here working and Liz Hanaway sitting on, a hammock at the beach. It's distracting. And that's not okay. That's because we wouldn't allow that in any school experience, right? And that wasn't what this was. This isn't the purpose of why we have this environment. It's to try to keep our schools healthy and safe. And that's the purpose. It's not this other piece.
Dr. De Silva, can I just pipe in with one comment? This is
Sure.
Aaron, the senior director. I just want to remind everyone, we kind of reserve the right to adjust as needed, given the prevalence of COVID in the community. If we had an outbreak in a particular building, we still may have to close the building for up to 10 days or temporarily do a hybrid model, depending on what's happening in the community. Unfortunately, right now, we are seeing a pretty significant uptick in new cases in Ridgefield. So that would definitely play into the decision-making when we meet with Ed Briggs and Dr. Hearn every week as well. So I think the goal obviously is to get all the kids back on April 19th. and also continue to be flexible enough that we can pivot to a safe model if necessary.
And the reality is, and Aaron, you didn't mention it, but you mentioned it in our Friday updates every week, is that it really, vigilance right now is incredibly important. It doesn't mean that you can't go away. It doesn't mean that you can't spend time with family or friends, but it means that you need to really pay attention. And the masks, the social distancing, the hand washing, all of what we know has worked to keep our schools safe. It's not only in our schools. And while those numbers increase, I have no doubt that this conversation becomes a different conversation if this was on, the week prior to us returning. So as much as possible, if we can all do our part, we want our kids back. It's time.
Anyone else? Liz?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for, one, ensuring our kids were in at all this year, which is amazing, and for making the decision to bring them back. To your point, Dr. De Silva, which you eloquently outlined, this isn't, any one of us couldn't go to the office randomly one day or the next without having impact to our day-to-day lives for those of us that go into an office. And the intent of this wasn't, you now have flexibility to live wherever you want and do whatever you want and log in. That's it. It wasn't. And so I really appreciate your commitment to that decision to bring our kids back in school, which we all value. We just had a strategic planning discussion around the value of neighborhood schools and the value of neighborhoods and the value of being together. And there are options for parents who prefer to have that flexibility. There are lots of remote learning options. And, as someone who's had some experiences with other types of schools this year that have been in every single day, all day, there was no option unless you're quarantining or actively ill or been exposed. And I think, this is the right decision. At some point it's going to happen. We've got to, hopefully we get to go back to normal and we get to have our kids have their full school experiences, whether they're seniors or freshmen or little ones that have just started the school experience. And I just want to say thank you for that, because it is hard and there is a lot of criticism out there for that decision, that people that want the ultimate flexibility, but in a normal year prior to this, it would never have even been an option. And so hopefully, I know I personally am hopeful that as we get vaccination rates up and we get numbers coming down again, and we get all of those things, that we get to go back to some of that normal, and we get to have school events, and we get to go see our kids in our sporting events. And so thank you for being a trailblazer on that with our district, because I think we've shown how important our kids' safety and health is, but also how important our community is in the schools. So thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, no, not you, Tina. Okay, good.
I think this is more for Scottsridge, because I'm from Scottsridge. I know we've talked about Scottsridge having a lot of overcrowding, and it is a smaller school for the amount of kids. Have you thought, just for parents who are listening and who are feeling a little overwhelmed with this, are there different ways you're doing stuff? Is there something, how they sit, maybe lunch, something you can share that will help maybe alleviate some of the stress the parents are feeling, because it is a crowded school. So I thought maybe this is the good time to ask that.
I'll let Lisa speak to it in a minute, because she obviously, and just to commend this whole committee, because they worked so incredibly hard, and the amount of thinking and details and shields and moving tables around and everything else. So I know that Lisa knows every measurement in that building. And the reality is, there's no doubt Scottsridge is our tightest building, and of all of the buildings, and we intend on being incredibly transparent with families, because families need to make their own choice. And this year they have the privilege to do that, right? I don't know what next year will be, but this year that's certainly an option. I would say that of all the buildings, Scottsridge will be the most challenging to consistently implement 3 feet. I'm not even going to go down the road of 6 feet. I'll just stick with 3. So consistently implementing the 3 feet. The luxury that we have in April, right, is that it's spring. And so therefore, I don't know why Liz Hanaway said anything about snow earlier. Well, we'll talk about that tomorrow, but it's spring and therefore the grass will be dry and feet will not sink in the snow. And so those outdoor spaces and tents, and we'll add more if we need to, will have to be utilized, right? And maximized, because the other piece of this is the ventilation and having the windows open and having kids outside as much as possible. And listen, if the academics aren't there as much as we'd like because they're spending a little bit more time outside and socially engaging, this superintendent's not going to complain. Ultimately, I want kids in school, and we know that socially they need that. And so if teachers are taking their kids out and trying to engage with learning out there more than inside, and they lose a little bit of transition time, okay, we got them in. And so Lisa, I don't know if you want to speak specifically
Sure.
about spaces, but
I mean, they're all great questions, and a couple of things. If all kids are back, it makes taking kids outside for learning much easier, because right now it's a challenge to teach your students that are online when you're outside, especially with the Wi-Fi at Scotts Ridge. So that's one thing. If all kids were back, that would be a lot easier. Secondly, it's a newer building. We have a newer ventilation system. All of the classrooms are exterior. They all have windows. We don't have any interior classrooms. But lastly, one of the challenges is because it's a newer building, we have built-ins that are built all the way around the classroom, built-in cabinets, built-in desks and shelves around the edges. And we have trap tables for seating, not traditional desks in the classroom. So the trap table is 3 feet long. So we would have students sitting on opposite ends of the trap table so that they're 3 feet apart. But the person that would be sitting with their back to them would not necessarily be 3 feet away, because their back would be closer to probably 2 feet from the next set of trap tables or row of trap tables. Obviously, if everybody comes back, our class sizes, because of the 50-50 split, are, we've got classes of 25, 26, and 27, but I don't think that's different than the elementary school.
No, not different. And I will say this, if the survey results are anything like the survey results that we requested this past December, I anticipate the vast majority of our middle schoolers will be in. I don't doubt that they will, even with what we've shared now in terms of the ability to social distance consistently. I do think that most of our families will send their children in. At least I don't know if you think otherwise, or Trish, but.
No, I definitely think so. We haven't had a significant number of students that have been cohort C all year long. We have 160 there right now, but they haven't been there all year long. They've been doing exactly that ping pong in and out.
Right. And I've had a lot of parents asking if their children can come back. We have children coming to the office asking, can they come back? So there's a lot of interest and enthusiasm to be together because learning is a community endeavor.
And just one last piece, just to summarize this, and I don't know if we'll have more questions, but I think the other piece that we have to remember is that yes, on April 7th, 16 and up have the potential to be vaccinated. It's not going to be required on April 7th, right? But it's going to be months and months and months before, if the littles even get vaccinated, right? So we have to start thinking about what this is really going to look like, because if we don't, we're never opening school at the secondary level. We're just not going to happen. So if we're going to wait for every child to be vaccinated, I don't know when we'll open school. So at some point, I think Liz said it well, is that you're balancing the risk and the reward. This is the time in the spring where I think that we may be able to navigate it the best.
The other mitigating measure that we didn't mention is that we do have face shields available for students in the cafeteria if they should choose to wear them. So we've handed out one to every student as they come back, if we have more available, if they would like to wear them during lunch as well.
They're not as popular as we hoped.
No.
I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you for the patience, for all your patience for answering these questions. I have tried to highlight as many concerns as I've heard from parents. I'm sure there will be still more floating. I'm glad that you're willing to listen, you're willing to partner, because as you keep saying, it is community. I understand kids need to be back. I totally get that. And we have to move forward, hoping majority gets vaccinated and we stay as safe as we can. I mean, so thank you for your patience, because I know I've kind of over pushed the question. Sorry, Jonathan.
No, not at all. They were all
I'm going to
valid.
try to sit on my hands now. So
Are there any more questions, or shall we move on? Great, thank you for that. That's very exciting to get back to this place for the first time in over a year.
Thank you.
District priorities update.
Oh, you know what? Hang on a second. I need to share that myself. Give me one sec. Should have been better prepared. Give me 1 minute. I just opened a different presentation. We all know what wait time is like on a screen.
You need a new Chromebook?
I don't, thankfully. I'm good, but we did actually during interviews. So while you're distracted, while I'm grabbing
What she's
this
not
is-
telling you is she has 4 million tabs open.
Yeah.
at least.
One of them is setting me up for some vacation on a hammock somewhere, apparently.
Yeah.
All right. Here, I'm going to share my screen. But what actually happened that Wes forgot to mention is that during the interviews this past week, we got to notice some of the issues with Chromebooks, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, all right, here we go. Let's see, hopefully you can see my screen. Can everyone see this? No. Hang on. Were you able to see that or no?
We were.
Oh,
Yes.
all right, hang on, I'm back up, sorry. Okay, so here you all have this in your packet. So I took a minute just to have it available. So for the public, they have the ability to see it as well. You may remember at the start of the year, we identified district priorities that really came from the district entry plan, but also things that we've heard or items that we heard at the August retreat. And so what you have really is just a very quick update to the right, and we'll provide another update in May. I don't think that I need to spend any time on priority 1, which is to develop a reopening plan that supports students, families, and faculty through the global pandemic. But you can see the update on the right, many of the things that we do to ensure that our families are communicated with and our faculty are communicated with in a timely way. I'm going to shift down. I'll speak to this, although Dawn, if you want to add anything to the conversation. A big part of our budget and finance and committee topics this year was around the bank accounts and ensuring that we had all of the best practices related to those bank accounts based on the recommendations that came from the committee. I believe we're at a good place and we finalized those. Dawn, do you want to add anything there? Dawn, are you on mute or I can't see you? There you go. You're on mute.
Sorry. So we are working, as you can see, with our bank accounts, and we'll be discussing 2 of them tonight that have come up as questions from the town with what remaining balances will be. We have worked a great deal with the student activity funds, and we have a manual that we are working to get out to the principals, since they are the custodians of those accounts, to give them some guidance and best practices on how to deal with the student activity accounts and how to have best communications with the business office and how to appropriately maintain and account for the student activity money that goes through those accounts. Most of our other accounts are all set. We are working with the Budget and Finance Committee almost every meeting, going over any remaining activities that we have with the different bank accounts that were up with question. And I think we have addressed all of them, and we are now on to operations with any changes that we have. Let's see, so pretty much the bank accounts I think are good. Yep.
Okay.
And the second part of our activity that we are working on in the business department is to try to get time clocks implemented. We currently are still somewhat working on timesheets for some areas, especially in our custodial area. We would like to get them so that it's a little bit more automated. The time clocks have been purchased. They have been installed in the buildings. We have purchased the software for the time clocks, and it does integrate with our payroll system. And so now we're building the behind the scenes technology for that complies with the various union negotiated requirements for the individual types of unions that we have, and the requirements for clocking in, clocking out, break time, and building that in with the vendor at this point. We hope to have that finished. We probably will have that finished for next year. We hope to have it up and testing by the end of this fiscal year. And then we are also working with the personnel department to try to bring efficiencies with between our two departments. Is a lot of what we do and a lot of what the personnel department does when dealing with the employees interact with each other.
Thanks, Dawn. All right, transitioning to Joe, facilities.
Yeah, my goal for this year was definitely around the communicating stronger with the town facilities and engineering group, because there's been so much focus on the upkeep of the buildings externally as well as internally. So what I have done to date so far is a database addressing roof leaks and other issues surrounding a lot of the town exterior stuff to improve the turnaround time on repairs or replacement. And there's also been a strong knowledge exchange of resources. Now we're melding our two departments together and sharing a lot of our resources for the common good. So it's a work in progress. We got a lot to go, but we're definitely seeing a lot of positive actions out of this.
Okay.
Yep.
So this priority started with me and will now transition beautifully over to Corey Gillette. In teaching and learning, we look to establish short and long-term goals through an assessment of the teaching and learning structure, pre-K through 12. So what we've started with is to really gain some better understanding of what our kids are going to need for the coming year. So we have a plan for end of fiscal year 21. You heard me talk about that earlier, for a summer program that will focus on remediation, but also acceleration. We also are looking at a tentative summer plan
for July.
Fiscal year 22. Do you want to speak about it, Corey? You've been quiet all night.
Sure. We're working on a summer plan that's going to both support social and emotional learning as well as academic learning. And we're excited about some of the just fun, interactive, non-digital programs that our teachers are already thinking of, and actually really excited about joining us and teaching this summer. So that's that part. You want to keep going on the restructuring and I'll jump back in?
You bet it. So develop a restructuring plan. As you know, we have a new elementary director, Linda Johnson. She will begin on April 15th. We are pretty set to close on a math and science chairperson. So hopefully we'll be able to share more information about that in the next week or two. If the budget gets passed, we will have a 612 humanities staff member. So I think we'll be starting off the year with a pretty clean structure around the core academic areas. Corey has been hard at work with some of these smaller departments and or the electives, and being sure that we have a communication system for them as well, although that's not outlined here. Math placement, that has been a lot of time and energy. Corey?
Ever since my first day in the district, I've been working with a representative team across all levels, working on what math placement is going to look like this year, which is an unusual year. So families can look forward to that communication, both written at the beginning of April and then through separate presentations, one for the elementary and one for the middle school at the end of the month. So you can look forward to hearing about that. Another exciting thing that we've continued forward that was started before I came was the sharing of an implementation plan for a phonological awareness, which is a part of early reading resource that we're going to implement in the fall of 21 in grades pre-K, K, and 1. So we've been working with teachers on exploring that resource and just spending a little bit of time on getting ready for full implementation of that in the fall. The other thing that we are just pulling together in the last couple of days is a collaborative action team, which is going to be studying a couple of phonics resources that we will eventually pick to implement as a whole district. So this is a collaborative action team, and really that team is made up of pre-K to second grade teachers, administrators, special educators, reading interventionists, and we're all going to study these different resources and then determine what's the best one for our students.
Let me take this one, or you want to take this one, Corey?
And just like I have from my first day, we've been working across all curriculum areas to get ready for the work that we're going to do this summer to figure out what compacting or accelerating we need to do as we move into the fall of 21.
All right, thank
That's
you.
it.
Last but not least, Dr. Hanaway, special education and developing a comprehensive K-12 co-teaching model.
Thanks, Susie. So when we presented these earlier in the school year, Dr. Show and I discussed our long term, as you see, our timeline here goes into 24-25 on developing a comprehensive K-12 co-teaching model. At the second through fifth grades, that would mean creating a model that doesn't exist, and at the secondary level, it's improving upon a model that exists. So as of tonight, we have begun to identify partner districts who we could work with as really kind of model mentors to look at their co-teaching programs and to learn from their models. This is going to be heavily in New York State, as they have a more robust requirement around the design of certain programs at the state level. So most districts have co-teaching to some degree at every elementary, middle, and high school. We have begun to identify and earmark professional development providers for the coaching of co-teaching teams. We have to research, and Corey knows this, and I know Susie does, you have to find these people a long time out, like a year to 2 years that you want to book if you want to spend a significant amount of time. And we know that really strong professional development is going to happen for general and special educators. And we've begun to design a co-teaching committee. Nothing more I want to do into next school year than run a committee, but we're going to need one. So we've started to design one that's going to initiate at the beginning of next school year to include special educators, related service providers, general ed teachers, and administrators. And we've also begun to design initial surveys. We're going to start with surveys and then go from there, of general ed teachers, special educators, students, and parents at the secondary level about their co-teaching service experiences. So we're very, very, very early on.
All right, so Jonathan, we'll take any questions for any one of us.
Do we have any questions?
I know we zipped through them quickly, but.
Now, from my perspective, it's just great to be able to look back at this as the year progresses and see to see progress and to see that we're staying on task, that we're doing what we decided to do at the beginning of the year. I don't have any particular questions. Does anybody on the board have anything to ask? No, I think with the exception of Liz, there's a lot of progress being made everywhere.
Chop, chop. All right, so we'll present again. You'll hear back from the team.
Liz, I was kidding.
She knows.
Okay. I don't know. My sense
I
of
can
humor doesn't go
appreciate
over
it at
well.
9:02.
All right. Again, we'll be back in May to discuss the outcome of these for this year.
Terrific. Thank you. Moving right along, athletics fund balance. Do I have a proposed motion?
I move that the Board of Education close the athletic fund upon completion of the fiscal year 2020-21 and forward to the town any remaining balance in the athletic fund with the recommendation that the funds be applied to the Tiger Hollow sinking fund.
Do I have a second? Kathleen. First off, this is written as a proposed motion to clarify. I mean, it's always the case, but just to make sure that it's clear to everyone here that you can make a motion to amend any motion that's brought forward. This was something that we discussed a month ago. It was something that was discussed with the Board of Finance a couple of nights ago. And it's, in my estimation, the best way forward we agreed to close that account. In my estimation, the best way forward is to send those funds left over to the town with nothing more than a recommendation as to how those funds are handled. Some people here in the room may have a different take, and I just want to make sure that you're clear that you can make a motion to amend if you prefer a different method to go forward here. Questions, comments? Barring any, all those in favor of the motion as written? It's unanimous. Thank you. And next we have the building rental balance. Do I have a proposed motion?
I move that the Board of Education bring the balance in the school building rental checking account to $50,000 and forward to the town the remaining difference of $60,336.04.
Do I have a second? Ken. Questions, comments, amendments?
Just a question, are we gonna, we're not going to recommend that they use it for any specific education related purpose?
So there's nothing in the proposed motion. This is really, it wasn't part of our budget. It's not an operating expense. It's just a balance that has grown over time. I didn't see it as being necessarily education related. However, feel free to move otherwise. If you prefer.
It doesn't really, it's left hand, right hand. So.
Right, exactly.
I'm just thinking, Liz, that you said that recommend that it go into the capital budget for the maintenance of schools. I'm just thinking something that would be related to buildings, but I think, again, like Liz says, it's, it's each hand, but if we wanted to make a recommendation.
Sure.
I'm not doing that.
Okay. Sean, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, just to dovetail on it, we can mandate that they use it for the schools, but they can just take other, the money that was going to be there and put it somewhere else. So it doesn't really mean anything.
Sure. And on the other flip side, we could choose not to send these funds to town. We could choose to try to use them ourselves this year. It just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. It wasn't part of our operating budget to begin with. To my point of view, it was the right thing to do is to send the money back to the town and allow them to use it as they deemed most appropriate. All good on that? We can take it to vote. All those in favor? Opposed? None? Great, thank you very much, unanimous. We can send that money back to the town. And we can move on. We have policies. We have a bunch of policies. Margaret is on via phone, but she is having some issues with her her audio, so she can hear us. We cannot hear her. So I'll take us through this policy 1700. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 1700, possession of deadly weapons or firearms on school property.
I have a second. Okay. This is the second read. Any further comments from the first read to now? Barring any, we can take it to a vote. All those in favor, raise your hands. Unanimous, and Margaret via text. Moving on, policy 2111. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 2111, equal opportunity employment.
Do I have a second? Kathleen. Again, a second read. Any other comments between first read and now? Barring any, moving to a vote. All those in favor, raise hands. All opposed? Liz, I can't see your hand, but if you're opposed. Liz? Unanimous? All right. Moving along, policy 3324.1. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 3324.1, contracts and affirmative action.
I have a second. Tina. Again, second read. Any comments or questions? Barring any, all those in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous, thank you. And moving on, do I have a motion for 5141.4, 4118.12?
Yes, I move that the Board of Education approve dual policy 5141.4 and 4118.12/4218.12, reports of suspected abuse or neglect of children or reports of sexual assault of students by school employees.
Do I have a second? Kathleen? Comments or revisions? Again, second read. There being none, going to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous. Thank you. And last policy for tonight, again, a second read, policy 5145.511. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I move that the Board of Education approve policy 5145.511, child sexual abuse and assault policy and reporting procedure.
Do I have a second? Tina. Again, second read. Any comments, amendments? No? There being none, going to vote. All those in favor, raise your hands. And again, unanimous. Thank you very much. And we can move on to the financial report ending February 28th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education accept the financial report for the period ending February 28th, 2021.
Do I have a second? Liz, thank you. Okay, financial report.
Okay, well, it's late and I know it's been a really long day for many people, so I won't bore you with a lot of financial stuff on this. I can tell you that as of February 28th, we have expended or obligated $95,715,038 of our $99.9 million appropriated budget, which is approximately 96%. We have received our first excess cost reimbursement, and it is part of these numbers. All categories are all accounting lines are expected to be within budget by the end of the year, with the exception of the 3 that we continue to talk about, which is excess cost, the COVID line, and school, the school lunch program. I want to bring your attention more towards the end of the report, the very last page. There's some new information on the last page that we'll be just working on, and you'll see some more information coming up. You did hear from Dr. DeSantis earlier today in his presentation that the district is required by the state of Connecticut Department of Education to administer the Smarter Balance Assessment and Next Generation Science Standard Assessment, and that both of these assessments are given on a computer through a secured browser. And the only way to access this browser is with a district device. Therefore, the many middle school and high school students that are currently using their own devices to access learning at home and at school will need a district device in order to take this assessment. In addition, these district devices need to be new enough in order for them to accommodate the latest updates required to run the secure browser. As you saw in his presentation, Dr. Sanders' presentation, the team is going through every available device and has started logging which ones need to be updated and how many new devices are needed in order for these assessments to be taken care of. Another area that is new to my reporting is that due to the impact of COVID-19 on the learning models and teaching and learning in general, all curriculum areas will need to engage in summer curriculum writing across grade levels in order to compact any missed learning into curriculum for the fall of 2021. This work will be in addition to any other planned curriculum revision projects. As Dr. DeSilva had mentioned, the summer school program is also being looked at and will start being implemented shortly. And then as a reminder, we have an unbudgeted, unfunded mandate to accommodate special needs students until the age of 22. This change came after the end of last school year as a result of a Connecticut court ruling. Because of this, there will be a need to cover additional funding within the special education budget. So all of these 3 areas that I just mentioned are not currently part of the expense that you're seeing and will need to be taken out of whatever we do have remaining in our budget in order to complete them this fiscal year. All in all, I believe we will be able to finish our fiscal year at this point within budget, and we should be able to address these areas and with the funds that we currently have. We did, my summary at the bottom, where we could have some positive effects to our budget or some negative effects to our budget. If I had wood, I'd knock on it. Let's say that the positive effects have been in our favor at this point, where we've had short-term and long-term disability claims and workers' compensation claims that has helped our salaries as well as unpaid leave of absences. So we do have some savings that we are anticipating at the end of the year on our salary lines. In addition to that, we've had some turnover and we've had some positions filled later in the year, which has allowed for encumbrances that were on those lines to not have to be fully utilized for the full year. Also, we've had a very positive claims medical experience, and COVID has caused medical claim experience to not be on a normal basis, so that when we did go to renewal our insurance policy, our employees benefit insurance policy, the underwriter also did take into consideration the fact that many individuals weren't able to get their medical procedures done, or that the claims experience is absent some of the claims experience you would see in a normal year. All in all, we were still able to bring to renewal our health benefits with our carrier at a very reasonable rate. I believe it's 2.89 is what we were all in on for our benefits, which gave us a bit of a savings for next year. And that also helped us for this year, as well as we've had some individuals, we've had a lower enrollment in our medical, which has caused us a little bit of savings again for this year. And then with our distance learning and some of our building closures that we've also had some savings in transportation. So all in all, I think we're going to end this year within our budget for the most part. If anything should change, I'll keep you abreast as I go through that each month. Anything
Questions?
specific?
So at this point, you see us utilizing 100%, but not 101% of our budget for the year. And you do not see us needing to tap into the carryover account that was set aside for us by the Board of Finance last year. Is that correct?
At this point, Jonathan, I'm going to say that I think we will be able to end the year within our current budget as we have it, as we have been appropriated. Could things change? Yes. Are there some unknowns that are unpredictable at this point? I'm sure there is. But as of today, right now, if I had to say we would end the year within our current appropriation, I would say that we should be able to do that.
On the athletic fund page, last page of the packet here.
Yep.
Fall participation fees were just slightly below prior year, but there's nothing in for winter participation fees at this point. Do you have any color on that?
The winter participation fees, I don't believe we collected winter participation fees, and I think that I would have to refer back to the athletic director on that. I'm not sure if there was a full winter program available, but we currently didn't receive any funds in the business office for winter participation, so I would have to reach back out to him as to what his reasoning.
I think the timing, Jonathan, did not allow for winter sports, but we can certainly double check. But if you remember, that's when the governor made the decision to cancel sports. So my prediction is if there were any funds collected, it was very little.
Okay. And then the fall participation fees 2021 matches with the winter participation fees 20. Is that just an accident, or is that right? Or
I believe that is accurate. Let me just pull the actual report, since that is very close to the actual number there. So fall was only 84,700 that was collected, and winter is zero collected at this point, or forwarded to the business office.
I'm sorry, so Dr. De Silva,
It's correctly reported.
Do we expect there to be a collection for winter participation fees or no?
I don't believe that there would be. Dawn, what were you going to say? No.
I was going to say I would have to reach back out to the athletic director, but I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, because Jonathan, the timing of the winter sports, I'm almost certain that I don't think any sport began in terms of when the governor made that decision. So the only difference might be of any sport that may have began, and so therefore a partial, pay to participate, but I don't believe so.
Okay. And then gate receipts, of course, is going to be de minimis for this year.
Correct.
We have a meeting with the Board of Finance tomorrow night. I'm just trying to get a clarity around some of the lost revenue items that they'll be asking about. So gate receipts is certainly on there. Participation fees as well.
Jonathan, would it be helpful if we gave you a list of that for tomorrow night?
I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, so gate receipts, pay to participate, and I know food service was another item, correct?
Right. I was going to ask about that in our COVID update, but
sorry.
No. That's great. And then as far as the balance on the athletic fund, currently it's showing a balance of 177 after encumbrances of 288. How close to that do we expect the end of the year to be?
It's hard to say. He still needs a full season that he's got to process through. It all depends on how his season goes and what expenses are used, what expenses are not used, what equipment needs to be purchased, what equipment doesn't need to be purchased, and what the rest of his expenses are taken.
And just looking forward, can we confirm that all the encumbrances are for 2020, 2021 fiscal year?
At this point, what you're looking on that report, yes.
Thank you.
Jonathan, 6 sports did compete in winter, so those pay to participate fees will be coming if they're not there yet.
Great. Other questions on the financial report or athletics? There's being a motion on the table. All those in favor of approving, please raise your hands. Any opposed? None? It's unanimous. Thank you. Transfers. I don't believe this is an action. There's no motion here. Nothing raises to the level of a motion, but we can go over the transfers now.
Sure, I'd be happy to. There's just a few on here. I'd like to keep you every month that I can up to date on any transfers that come through, just so you can see where money is and where money is going. Facilities had 2 requests this in February. They were looking to transfer from building repairs at the high school to building repairs at Scotch Ridge Middle School, $1,458, and that was to repair unexpected repairs that were needed for their HAZVAC system at Scotch Ridge Middle School. And then $7,500, they were looking to move from Eastridge Middle School projects to projects at Farmingville, and that is to repair or replace a domestic hot water tank at Farmingville Elementary School. One question that came up in committee was there any projects at Eastridge that wouldn't get done because of the movement of that $7,500? And in speaking with Joe Moretz, no, that there's plenty of funds to finish the projects that they have there at this time, or that he has in other parts of his budget in order to move it there. Library at the high school has asked for instructional materials to be reduced by $1,275.62 and moved to collections. And the reason for this was they feel that as needs for instructional materials have lessened due to COVID, they're requesting the transfer to update their collection. And then the last one is special education. They have a need to cover contracted services for outside services that come in and cover for positions for individuals who are out on maternity leave. So they were looking to take money from 3 areas and move that to tutoring purchase services, elementary teachers, teacher speech, and psychologists, for a total of $53,352 on that transfer.
Thank you. And again, because these are below $50,000 for each transfer and within their object account, they don't need board approval, correct?
Correct. They're all within their accounts.
Any questions on any of the transfers? All right, thank you.
And
We've
then
read along with the
last-
COVID-19 update.
Certainly. Last on the list, a COVID update. Not a lot of activity has happened on the COVID update. We really have lessened our need to purchase for COVID in the schools. The COVID remains or is approximately the same as last month for a total of our accounts payable COVID expenses. Facilities, the nurses department, special education, technology, and curriculum total $1,121,306.20. Payrolls did increase as I'm bringing in actuals for each of the payrolls. So every month they go up by 2 payrolls. Health office paraeducators is at $13,841.99. Building substitutes, $264,440. Custodial overtime, there was no increase to custodial overtime for the month of February. They remained at $17,751.36, and the COVID liaison was $12,631.55. All in all, salaries were $308,664.90. We did have food service that increased. The actuals for food service is $194,567.96. So bringing forward the front page into the second page, all in all, if we look at all of the unbudgeted expenses at this time for COVID, is $1,624,539.06. Offsets to that there was a slight increase in some of the offsets, and the increase was from our wellness, health and wellness fund that we have with Anthem, that we normally would have either a craft fair or a health and wellness fair or some type of activity in order to get individuals out doing a walk or some type of exercise. Because of COVID, we weren't able to do that. So we were able to use some of those funds to offset some of the cost of our PPE. So that money has been added. Our grant draws were $296,154.15. We have the transfer of $189,888.95. And our other funding, which is the Anthem that I had just spoken about, is up to $155,640.64. So total offsets to our $1.6 million is $641,683.74. So total still that we are looking at to cover is $982,855.32. Currently, you're still looking at just the 2 COVID grants that we have been awarded and have drawn down on. Should there be additional COVID expense that meets this fiscal year, I'll add that to the list when that occurs. Flipping to the very last page is any addition to the expenditures that we currently have listed in the beginning. These are assumptions or possible needs that we could have going through the rest of this fiscal year. These salaries have been updated. The health office paraeducators, we're looking at approximately another 7,000 there. Building substitutes, approximately 166,000 there. Custodial overtime, perhaps maybe 30,000. Hopefully we don't have a need for custodial overtime and there are no more COVID cleaning that we have to do going forward. And the COVID liaison, about $7,400. Food service, we anticipate a possible $300,000 more by the end of the fiscal year. And the other categories, the last 4 categories, still remain at $30,000, $50,000, $15,000, and $30,000. So a total estimated possible expense is $635,400 at this point.
Questions? I've got one. So on food service, we're currently at $195,000 of lost revenue, which could be as high as $495,000 at the end of the year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You won't hazard a best guess as to where we'll land, will you?
I wouldn't want to hazard a best guess at this point. It all depends on the amount of not purchases, because all the meals at this time are free, but with the exception of the high school. It all depends on how much state funding we get to offset our expenses. Obviously, we have had a skeleton crew in there at this point. That may change just a little bit depending on if our learning model changes a little bit. But hopefully,
But if our learning model changes, we'll also sell more food, right?
Exactly. As we bring more students in, hopefully more students will go to the cafeteria and take food from the cafeteria, and therefore we can turn around and submit those to the state for reimbursement. So it's hard to say, Jonathan, but hopefully at this point, we do see more revenue coming in from the state, or the high school does sell more food, and that would be regular revenue coming in. And we are able to maintain our expenses at a reasonable amount, so that it becomes a little more profitable than what we anticipate it might be.
Anybody else? Ken?
Just a point of clarity. So right now we're anticipating, so we have our unbudgeted expenses, less some of the offsets. So we're at about just shy of $1 million. Then that 635 is going to be on top of that. So we're going to be at about, we're estimating right now about 1.5 million potentially. 1.6.
If right, up to
Up to. Thank you.
potentially.
Anyone else? Okay, we can move on to items of information, starting with the enrollment report.
Okay, yep, thank you. So each month we tell you the ins and out of our enrollment. So this is an item of information, so you can just quickly see that we have a net increase of about 10 students. There's no change at the high school, but you can see some slight ins and outs from K through 8, but our primary driver would be the pre-K this month.
Interesting.
Any questions?
Interesting to see such a jump in pre-K.
Yeah, so there's a reason for that. Go ahead, Dr. Hanway.
So that's not due to students moving in. That's due to students qualifying for the program. So students can qualify for the program on a rolling basis, depending if they for 3-year-olds, they can qualify if they come out of the birth to 3 system upon their 3rd birthday. They're eligible to begin upon their 3rd birthday. And then after 3rd birthday, parents can make a community referral from 3 or 4 years old, as long as they're of preschool age. So the preschool numbers always grow as the year goes on. We actually staff and plan that way because the numbers grow as they age in. It's not aging out, it's aging in.
Got it. And the 18 to 21 year group, that is really an 18 to 22 year group at this point?
Mm-hmm.
And then a few on the outplaced, is that back into town?
We have had some students come back into town, yes.
Great.
I think an interesting byproduct of COVID has been students who have traditionally been in private placements through their IEP, actually having a better virtual experience in district. So be interesting to see what happens long term now that the virtual experience is going to be lessening, but
It's nice to have them back.
Right. Oh, definitely.
Always.
Okay. Moving on to the staffing report.
Okay, so again, each month we let you know the ins and out of our staffing. So who's resigned or given us their resignation or retirement letters, and who we've hired since the last Board of Ed meeting. So if there's any questions, otherwise it's just an item of information.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, last we've got the last item of information is the Board of Ed meeting timeline. You can see we've got, and this is hatched off until to tonight. We do have a budget workshop with the Board of Finance tomorrow night. We do have the April 5th meeting, which is a special meeting because of timing with spring break. That is open right now. We are leaving it open primarily to see what happens with the Board of Finance. I'm still hopeful that with the very responsible budget that we put forward and the the positive meetings we've had with both the boards of selectmen and the Board of Finance, that we won't need to make any major changes to that meeting. That if that is the case, assuming that is the case, I'd like to have that be the beginning of our dive into open choice, as well as if anybody else has items that they'd like to bring up, please send me a note. We can see if we can get them into that April 5th meeting as well. And that brings us to correspondence reports. Public comment first.
Good evening. Yes, we do have public comment this evening. We have one public comment. Zhang Liu, 131 11 Levels Road. I have written to our superintendent, but haven't heard any response. You may have heard the horrific news about the Atlanta shootings. As an Asian parent, I am feeling sad, angry, and frustrated. This kind of crime can happen to our colleagues, neighbors, friends, ourselves, and our children. President Biden, Vice President Harris, and other organizations, communities, all issued statements to condemn this anti-Asian hate crime, support the Asian Americans, and express their dedication to combating injustice and hatred of any kind. I would like to know RPS stance and reaction to this crime. Do we have any plan of communications to explain and guide parents and our children? Thank you. Okay. Correspondence report. We received 7 emails since our last regular Board of Education meeting. 1 email inquired on where to find resources pertaining to sexual assault and information on our school climate specialists. 1 email inquired about the Open Choice program. 4 emails shared feedback and/or concerns on the transitioning between learning plans on the secondary level, and 1 email inquired about residence and school registration. That's all.
Thank you. We have reached the end of a very long agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Moved by Ken. Do I have a second? Rachel. All those in favor? Thank you all very much for your hard work.
Thank you. Everyone be safe.
See you tomorrow night.